Okay, welcome back to the early Valiant Barracuda folks. There's a guy on the 64 to 66 site that is having trouble with fuel and temperature gauges, and we did a video. I can't find it, so I'm going to do another one here. So, and there's also some misnomers that the temperature, right, which is here, and the fuel, which is here, that they are independent for fuel, for voltage, for input voltage, and that is 100% incorrect. So let me see if I can get a pointer in here. So this line is your 12 volts input that goes into the fuel gauge. The fuel gauge then converts the 12 volts DC to pulsating 5 volts, which comes out through this right here, which, as you can plainly see, goes down and powers the temperature gauge. And then from there, okay, you have two input senders. There's a sender for temperature. Here's the input for fuel. The fuel sender would go there. Temperature sender would go there. We have built a very rudimentary, I don't know if you can see it there with the light, power transistor with a capacitor that if you follow, so the red wire is 12 volts input from the actual car, and then the green wire is 5 volts constant output, and then the black wire is ground. And you can see we can put the 5 volts input to the both gauges right here because, as I stated earlier, the solder trace goes to both. Okay. Now the tricky thing here is you must isolate the 12 volts coming from the car input. All right. You must isolate that to this stud. If you don't isolate this stud, nothing you do is going to work because current will travel the least possible resistance, which means it will go to both places. And this will now become a load. So you want to take out the internal voltage limiter. By doing that, you have to pull the gauge out, and I've done this video numerous times. In fact, this gauge is about dead, but you need to put some heat shrink over the stud so that it doesn't touch any part of the solder trace there, which it's doing so. You need an eyelet that's big enough to go around the stud. I don't know if you can see that very well. Around the stud, still capture the solder traces. And then you must also take and I have a plastic washer, so that when we screw this guy back down, when we do this, and I'm doing this one-handed, hopefully we can get it done. All right, that looks like it'll work. So now we're gonna do some operational checks. So as you can see here on the bench, very rudimentary, but I have a power supply you probably can't see. It's at about 12.5, 13 volts. I have a digital voltmeter. So you're now going to pretend that we're putting on the round connector, and we're going to put that there for 12 volts in. So now, as you can see, we have 13 volts input and nothing on that stud. Except your 4 volts. It's somehow coming through. And here is your, is that pulsating? Let's take a look here. I've never measured voltage on that stud. It's isolated. Let's see here. Oh, awesome. So you've got your, we must be feeding through, back through the limiter. So that is your steady lineal 5 volts there on the temperature and on the fuel side. And then there's a voltage drop as well. About 1/4 volt going through the limiter, which that would probably make sense, right? But the main thing is that those two are not touching, as you can kind of see there. So now what we'll do is, and then what we've done is we've taken, here's the input lead for a, this is for a fuel sender, which we have a sender right here. And we have it all hooked up. And actually I think we're on full, so this thing should be climbing a little bit here. Yeah, so we're climbing. Slowly but surely we're moving at a 5 volt lineal pace. Now this gauge has smoked a few times during the building of this. I really need to get another one, but it may probably stop somewhere in there. But as we move, once again I don't have any hands. So now we'll put the gauge back to empty. And as you can see, we go back down, and then maybe we'll kind of see what that does halfway. That there for halfway, somewhere in there, and then we're somewhere in there. So that's how that works, just so folks know. Remember too, if you ever get one of these piece of crap Quanta gauges, have it rebuilt. Don't even put it in the car. They're crap. Have it rebuilt by somebody that knows what the hell they're doing. And remember too, when you're looking at this, just because you're on half with the armature and stuff, with all the geometries, that really doesn't mean that where your needle should be. And then what we'll do is, because somebody had a question about, and we'll do this just for a second. Somebody had a question about temperature. So we're just going to ground the temperature gauge. And as you can see, she's climbing pretty fast. Obviously, I don't know what the ohm values are for a temperature sender, and all like that. So that's how this works. Dispelling any rumors about temperature and gasoline having their own voltage. That's incorrect. And then on the back here, the big thing is you just got to remember to isolate your 12 volts here. Very, very important. And then, you know, get this does typically get kind of hot. Let's see. Yeah, so it's like 50 degrees in my shop right now. So, and I didn't design this. This was already designed by a guy that I should know his name and I've forgotten. But if you go to the Early Valiant web page, you'll see all this stuff here. All this stuff can get had for on the internet. Very, very important to use some type of a heat sink. This is actually somewhat warm, and it'll get much warmer as you drive the car for hours upon hours. And I think I was going to mount this somewhere in here or whatever on this one, but I take it off and on so much for show and tell because electronics are a little difficult to learn sometimes. But that's how it works, folks. There is no other real crazy science about it. And as you can see, that we'll go back up to full. Put the gauge there. Now, if you don't have a fuel sender, that's okay. You don't need one. What you don't ever want to do is ground any of these gauges with nothing in between them. They need some kind of a resistance. And once again, like I said, I'm doing this off the cuff. I don't even remember what the ohmic values are for the gas gauge and the temperature gauge. But if you were to get the high limit and the low limit resistors and then one in the middle, you'd be able to build your own resistance box just to check. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's it. I hope this helps out the fella that's having trouble. I'm going to save this with an actual name and put it probably on my website so anybody can come grab it. And I'll tell Roger Kaiser to do the same somehow. The internet kind of blows my mind. I'm not really sure how the hell it works. But that's it. This is all it is. It's about 5 or 6 little parts. You know, like I say, big thing is got to isolate this. Some folks have said, well, couldn't I just solder your power wire here? And you 100% could. You could solder your wire right to the board, you know, remove some of the contact trace or whatever. And you probably could even get away with not putting the nut back on. But you do still need to isolate the stud. The stud cannot get powered again from the car for the 13 volts there. That's interesting, but I never thought to look back. That and this limiter is destroyed. It's smoked. It's been, you know, abused. My next thing is to take this gauge apart, remove the limiter altogether, rebuild the gauge, and then it'll just strictly be solid state. I used to be able to show folks, and it won't even do that anymore. I used to be able to show folks how it normally works in the stock configuration. When you put a test light or a meter here, it'll actually pulsate, and we can't even get it to do that anymore. So anyway, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video.